The universe had never seen anything like this before. The Galactic Council, a powerful group of alien races that controlled the galaxy, had just made an unprecedented decision. In a broadcast that rippled across the stars, they announced that humanity, Earth's people, were banned from participating in all future galactic wars. The news spread like wildfire, shaking every corner of the galaxy. Species that had long seen humans as the brave newcomers, willing to fight side by side with them, now turned their backs. They were no longer allies. They were a threat. On Earth, the news was met with shock and disbelief. Captain John Blake sat in the dimly lit command room of the Raven, one of Earth's most advanced warships. He stared at the screen, reading the words again and again. Humanity banned from the galactic wars. It didn't make sense. Earth had been a part of the Galactic Alliance for decades. The humans had fought beside the alien races, proving themselves time and again. So why now? Why were they banned? Blake's heart raced. His crew, sitting around the large table, exchanged nervous glances. Lieutenant Vance, his second in command, was the first to speak. "Captain, do you think this is permanent? A mistake, maybe?" Blake's mind raced, but he shook his head slowly. He knew better than anyone that the Council's decision was no mistake. It was too deliberate, too calculated. Suddenly, a new transmission crackled through the communication system, cutting off any further discussion. It was an encrypted message from an unknown alien source. Blake's fingers hesitated over the controls before he hit the button to decode it. The words flashed onto the screen. "The humans are too dangerous. They fear us. Stay out of the war or face destruction." Blake's jaw clenched. His blood ran cold. The message was clear. The humans were feared, not because they were weak, but because they were strong. And the Council wasn't afraid of Earth's ships or weapons. No, they feared the people of Earth, the humans themselves. His crew went silent as Blake's mind began to race. What had Earth done to deserve this? Why were they suddenly a threat? And more importantly, who was behind this decision? Blake glanced at the faces around him, and he could see the same confusion, the same disbelief in their eyes. But something else was there, too: fear. As the crew began to process the implications of the transmission, Blake's gaze turned to the window. Outside, the blackness of space stretched out in every direction. In the distance, the tiny dots of distant stars blinked like cold, indifferent eyes. For a brief moment, he felt utterly alone in the vastness of the galaxy. Blake snapped out of his thoughts when the comms officer's voice broke through the silence. "Captain, the fleet's been ordered to fall back. The Council's blockade is tightening. All ships are being forced to retreat to Earth." A wave of anger swept through Blake. He didn't know who had given the order, but it didn't matter. There was something bigger at play here, something far darker than any political decision. He knew that this was not just about military strategy. The Council had made their decision for a reason, and it wasn't because they thought humanity was incapable of fighting. It was because they were afraid. Blake turned toward his officers. "Prepare to move out. Full speed ahead. We need to make it back to Earth. Now." But as the crew scrambled to execute their orders, something unexpected happened. The ship's sensors blared a warning. A cloaked alien vessel had just entered their vicinity. Blake's instincts screamed at him, "Red alert. Get us out of here now." But it was too late. Before they could even engage the ship's engines, a barrage of plasma shots lit up the dark void of space, striking the Raven with devastating force. Sparks flew from the console, and Blake's body was thrown against the wall as the ship lurched violently. "Shields are down to 30%, Captain," shouted Ensign Miller, one of the officers at the tactical station. The cloaked alien ship was too fast, too powerful. Even the advanced cloaking systems of the Raven couldn't hide them for long enough to evade the attack. The enemy ship's sleek, dark form became visible for a brief moment as it released another barrage. Blake gritted his teeth, desperately trying to stay focused. "Return fire," Blake ordered, even as his heart hammered in his chest. The Raven's weapons systems powered up, but the enemy ship was already on the move again. It danced through space like a shadow, impossible to target. With each evasive maneuver, the Raven suffered another hit. Blake's mind raced. Whoever was behind this, whoever was pulling the strings, had already made their move. They were trying to wipe out humanity before they could even fight back. The Raven wasn't prepared for this kind of battle, but Blake wasn't going to let it end here. He knew the Raven's strength, and if he had to, he would fight until the last moment. He leaned over the comms console. "All ships, retreat immediately. We need to get out of this sector now." But even as the order was given, Blake knew it was too late. The damage to their engines was severe, and escape was no longer an option. Another hit struck the hull, sending a shockwave through the ship. The Raven started listing to the side, and Blake felt the ship groan under the stress. He looked at his officers, their faces pale, their hands shaking. They were fighters, but even they knew they were in over their heads. "Captain, we're not going to make it." Lieutenant Vance's voice was barely a whisper. "No," Blake shouted, slamming his fist against the console. He wasn't going to lose his ship. Not like this. He ordered a full emergency evasive maneuver, but just as the ship swerved to avoid another blast, something happened. The Raven was hit again, this time with a more powerful weapon. A large portion of the hull was torn open, and alarms blared in every corner of the ship. The crew was thrown into chaos. Blake struggled to maintain control, but his mind was reeling. Who was behind this attack? Why had they taken such drastic action against humanity? A single thought repeated in his mind. The Council fears us. But why? They were not alone in the galaxy. There were countless species, each with their own powers, their own strengths. Yet, for some reason, the Council saw humanity as the greatest threat of all. Blake ordered a retreat once again, but this time, there was no longer a chance to fight. With his ship critically damaged, there was no option left but to escape. They had no choice but to run. As they fled through the asteroid fields, the enemy ship continued its pursuit. Even with the Raven's advanced cloaking systems, they were no match for the relentless alien vessel. The tension was suffocating. Blake's every instinct told him that the enemy was closing in, and it would only be a matter of time before they caught them. With every asteroid that passed by, Blake felt the weight of the situation grow heavier. The universe was changing, and humanity had just become a target. Why did the Galactic Council fear them so much? What was it about humanity that had caused them to take such drastic measures? Blake knew he was about to find out, but the question remained, would they survive long enough to uncover the truth? The Raven continued its perilous journey, desperately trying to evade its pursuers. Blake's grip on the command chair tightened, his mind racing through every possible outcome. This was just the beginning. The fight for humanity's place in the galaxy had only just begun. The Raven was battered and bruised, but it had survived the assault. For now, that was enough. Captain John Blake sat in the command chair, his hands gripping the cold steel. The tension in the air was thick. His crew, shaken by the close call, was trying to process everything that had happened. But Blake wasn't just concerned with their immediate safety. He was fixated on one thing. Why had the Galactic Council banned humanity from the wars? Blake's mind raced as he reviewed the encrypted message they had received. The humans are too dangerous. They fear us. Stay out of the war or face destruction. It wasn't just the message that disturbed him, it was the timing. The Galactic Council had never made such a drastic decision before. Why now? What had changed? He stared out at the endless void of space. A sense of unease gnawed at him. Something was hidden, something big. Blake couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. If the Council feared humanity so much, it had to be more than just Earth's recent advancements in technology. There had to be something else, something deeper. Blake's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice behind him. "Captain, "You need to see this." It was Lieutenant Vance, looking pale but determined. "What is it?" Blake asked, his voice steady despite the storm of questions swirling in his head. "We found something. Something hidden." Vance turned to show Blake the results of their recent scan. "We intercepted a transmission from an unknown source. It's an intelligence report, classified, and it reveals something terrifying." Blake's heart skipped a beat as he leaned over Vance's shoulder. The data on the screen was encrypted, but it was clear enough to make out a few key points. The Galactic Council had been secretly monitoring humanity's rise for decades. They had been tracking Earth's progress, studying humanity's every move, every technological leap. "What is this?" Blake whispered, as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. "They've been watching us. And they fear us." Vance nodded grimly. "Not just watching, Captain. They've been preparing for humanity to become a threat." A chill ran down Blake's spine. Preparing? For what? Vance didn't have an answer, but Blake could feel it in his bones. The Council's decision to ban humanity wasn't just political, it was a declaration of war. And they hadn't just banned them. They had set a plan in motion to wipe them out. Blake's thoughts were interrupted again, this time by the voice of Bonner, his best friend, and the most seasoned soldier on the crew. Bonner was standing at the door to the command room, looking troubled. "What's going on, Bonner?" Blake asked, rising from his seat. Bonner walked into the room, his boots heavy against the floor. His face was tense, and his eyes were full of the weight of years of experience. "Captain, I've been thinking about this for a while. I've seen what the Council's capable of. They've always underestimated us, you know. But they're not doing that anymore." Blake frowned. "What do you mean?" Bonner looked at him, his expression solemn. "Humans have always been the underdogs, always outgunned, outnumbered. But we have something they'll never understand, Blake. Our will to survive. It's in our blood. It's what makes us different, and that's why they're scared." Blake took a deep breath, letting Bonner's words sink in. The old soldier was right. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its firepower. It was in the raw, unyielding determination to survive. And the Galactic Council was terrified of that. "We need to find out why they're so afraid of us," Blake said, his voice resolute. "There's more going on here. We can't just sit back and wait for them to make their move. We have to take action." Bonner nodded. "I agree. We need to get to the bottom of this. And I know just where to start." The plan was simple: infiltrate a Galactic Council space station and uncover the truth. The station was a hub of intelligence and military coordination, and it was heavily guarded by advanced AI systems and robotic sentries. But Blake wasn't worried. They had the element of surprise on their side, and they had one thing the Council didn't count on: human ingenuity. The crew of the Raven prepared for their mission with precision. They gathered weapons, gadgets, and everything they might need to break into the heart of enemy territory. Blake knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about survival. If they failed, humanity would be at the mercy of the Galactic Council. The station they were targeting was a vast, sprawling complex located in an uncharted sector of space. It was said to be one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy, protected by powerful defense systems, and patrolled by an army of AI-controlled robots. But Blake wasn't intimidated. The Raven was fast, and their crew was trained for situations just like this. They would get in, get the information, and get out. As the crew approached the station, Blake couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. This was their chance to finally learn the truth about why humanity was banned, and it was a chance to strike back against the Council that had wronged them. The Raven dropped out of warp in the shadow of the massive space station. Its hull was cold and imposing, covered in layers of armor designed to withstand the harshest of attacks. Blake's heart pounded as the crew prepared to board. "Stay sharp, everyone," Blake ordered. "We're going in quiet, but we don't know what we'll find. Expect heavy resistance." The airlock doors hissed open, and the crew silently stepped into the station. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the cold metal floors. They moved quickly, staying in the shadows, avoiding the patrolling robots that scurried about the halls. Blake led the way, his eyes scanning every corner, every door. He knew they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. As they reached the central command hub, they encountered their first challenge. A squad of robotic sentries, each armed with deadly plasma rifles. The robots were fast and efficient, but Blake's crew was faster. A fierce firefight erupted, the sound of gunfire filling the air as the crew fought their way through the station. Blake's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he fired his weapon, taking down robot after robot. But the station wasn't just guarded by machines. It was also protected by advanced security systems that Blake hadn't anticipated. He hacked into a nearby terminal, hoping to disable the security grid, but the system fought back, triggering a lockdown. The station's defenses were now fully activated. Blake's crew was pinned down, but they didn't stop fighting. They had come this far, and they weren't going to back down now. As the battle raged on, they finally reached the station's data core, where they uncovered the shocking truth. Hidden deep within the Galactic Council's files was a plan to eliminate humanity before they could become too powerful. The Council had been watching Earth for years, and now they intended to strike before humanity's technology and will to survive could pose a serious threat. But as Blake and his team were preparing to escape, tragedy struck. Bonner, Blake's closest friend, was killed in a vicious firefight. The loss was devastating. Blake's heart ached as he watched Bonner's lifeless body fall to the floor. In that moment, Blake knew what he had to do. The Galactic Council had to pay for what they had done. For Bonner, for humanity, and for the future of the galaxy. The crew made their way back to the Raven, their hearts heavy with loss, but their resolve stronger than ever. The mission was far from over. The battle for humanity's survival had just begun. And Blake knew one thing for certain. They would never back down. Blake's mind reeled as he absorbed the truth. The Galactic Council, the supposedly all-powerful governing body of the galaxy, had banned humanity because they considered Earth's inhabitants the ultimate wild card, a dangerous, unpredictable force in a galaxy full of calculated and rigid powers. It wasn't just that humans were technologically advanced or growing in numbers. No, it was something much more fundamental, something that struck at the core of their fears. The Council had observed humanity's rise for centuries. They'd watched as Earth went from a primitive, war-torn planet to a thriving powerhouse of technological innovation and military prowess. But there was something else that the Council couldn't ignore. Humans had an insatiable will to survive. The kind of will that couldn't be controlled or predicted. The kind that made them nearly impossible to defeat. Blake's gaze hardened as he thought of Bonner, of all the lives lost in the battle for survival. Humanity had always been underestimated, always the underdog. But now, that very trait, the drive to persevere against all odds, had made them the Council's greatest threat. And the Council wasn't going to allow any threats to the galactic order. The truth was clear now. Humanity wasn't just a future adversary. They were an immediate danger that had to be destroyed before they could grow too powerful. Blake clenched his fists in anger. He'd known there was something off about the Council's actions. But this was far beyond what he had imagined. He turned to his crew, his voice cold and determined. The Galactic Council doesn't just want us out of the wars. They want us wiped off the map entirely. They see us as a threat to everything they've built. Lieutenant Vance's voice was grim, but resolute. So what now, Captain? What do we do? Blake didn't hesitate. We fight. We make them understand that humanity is not to be underestimated. We show them what happens when you try to destroy us. The plan was simple. Disrupt the Council's operations, expose their corruption, and most of all, survive. But there was a problem. a major obstacle that Blake hadn't anticipated. The Council had one more weapon in its arsenal: Vorleth, the chief enforcer of the Galactic Council. A warrior unlike any Blake had ever faced, Vorleth was a ruthless alien who had earned a reputation for slaughtering entire fleets without mercy. Blake knew that facing Vorleth head-on was a risk, but it was a risk he had to take. The Council was moving against them fast, and time was running out. The Raven and its crew were going to be hunted no matter what, so it made sense to take the fight to the heart of the Council's operations. The chase began when Blake and his crew attempted to strike at the Council's central command station, hidden in the dark depths of space. As the Raven soared through the galaxy, Blake could feel the weight of the coming battle on his shoulders. His crew, though loyal and capable, had lost too much already. But Blake wasn't just fighting for survival now. He was fighting for revenge. He was fighting to ensure that humanity would never be enslaved, never be crushed beneath the Council's heel. As they approached the station, Vorleth and his army of elite warriors ambushed them, launching a deadly orbital bombardment from cloaked ships. Explosions rocked the Raven, and Blake could feel the heat of the blasts as they shook the ship's frame. He gritted his teeth, holding onto the control panel as the ship veered and twisted to avoid the incoming fire. It was no use. The barrage was relentless, and the ship was taking damage with every passing second. Blake's voice rang out, commanding his crew to fight with everything they had. The ship's guns roared as they returned fire, but it was clear they were outmatched. Vorleth's fleet had numbers, precision, and firepower on their side. Blake's crew was smaller, their ship battered and bruised from previous skirmishes, but Blake had something the Council didn't count on: human resilience. He led the charge, diving into the heart of the chaos. Blake's heart pounded as his hands moved deftly over the controls, pushing the Raven to its limits. Behind him, his crew engaged in a desperate dogfight, maneuvering in and out of asteroids and space debris to escape the enemy's relentless assault. Blake gritted his teeth as another explosion shook the Raven, sending the ship spinning wildly through space. He fought to steady the ship, cursing under his breath as he looked up at the incoming barrage of missiles. There was no time to dodge. The countdown to impact was ticking down, and Blake knew they wouldn't survive another hit. Then, just as the missiles were about to strike, Blake executed a risky evasive maneuver, sending the Raven into a wild spin. The ship hurtled through a nearby asteroid field, the explosion from the incoming missiles illuminating the void as they narrowly avoided disaster. Blake's pulse raced as he guided the ship through the field, pushing the limits of their cloaking technology to the extreme. But even as the Raven dodged and weaved through space, Vorleth's forces were gaining on them. Blake could feel the pressure mounting. Every move, every choice mattered. If they didn't outrun Vorleth now, they were dead. Suddenly, the Raven shook again. This time, it wasn't from explosions or enemy fire. It was from a direct hit. The ship's shield systems flickered, barely holding up against the onslaught. Blake's mind raced as he realized they were being cornered. The time for running was over. It was time to stand and fight. In that moment, Blake knew what he had to do. He had to face Vorleth, the true face of the Council's wrath. If he didn't, the fight for humanity's survival would be lost. But Blake wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "Prepare for combat," Blake barked. His voice rang with authority. "We're not running. Not this time." Vorleth's flagship emerged from the darkness of space, massive and imposing. It was a beast of a ship, bristling with weapons and defenses that dwarfed the Raven. But Blake wasn't intimidated. He knew that their only chance was to hit fast and hard. The crew of the Raven engaged in one final assault, launching everything they had at Vorleth's ship. The battlefield was chaos. Blake's ship was battered, their systems failing one by one, but Blake held on to the hope that they could pull through. The battle was brutal, close-quarters combat in the vastness of space. The enemy ship fired relentlessly, but Blake and his crew fought back with every ounce of strength they had. Explosions lit up the void as the two ships clashed, the Raven refusing to go down without a fight. But as Blake faced off with Vorlath himself in hand-to-hand combat, the emotional weight of the situation crashed down on him. He'd already lost so much: his friends, his comrades, his home. He couldn't let the Galactic Council destroy everything humanity had fought for. In the final moments of the battle, Blake saw his chance. With one decisive strike, he defeated Vorlath, ending the immediate threat and proving that humanity was not to be underestimated. But the cost was high. The Raven was in ruins, and Blake's crew was battered and broken. Yet Blake's resolve was unshakable. This fight wasn't over. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Blake knew the Council would stop at nothing to crush humanity, and they would fight with everything they had to survive. The ultimate fear had been realized. Their true power, humanity's raw will to survive, had now been unleashed. The stakes had never been higher. The days following Blake's victory over Vorlath were a blur of strategic planning, repairs, and survival. He and his crew were battered but far from broken. The Raven was heavily damaged, but it was still flying, still capable of fighting. However, Blake knew that they couldn't face the Galactic Council alone. They needed help, and they needed it fast. The first step was to reach out to the rogue planets and independent factions scattered throughout the galaxy. These were the outcasts, the ones who didn't fit into the Council's rigid system of control. They were often overlooked, oppressed, or outright ignored by the powerful forces of the Galactic Council. But Blake saw something in them, something that mirrored the very spirit of humanity. These people were underdogs, just like Earth. Blake's message spread quickly. The Raven's communications were encrypted, but word leaked out across the galaxy. The humans are fighting back. They're resisting the tyranny of the Council. It's time to join the fight. Blake's call was answered by unexpected allies. A group of rogue allies, a pirate faction that had once fought for the Council, and even a few sympathetic alien races who had witnessed the Council's oppressive rule firsthand. Each of them had a reason to stand with humanity. As Blake met with the leaders of these factions, he was struck by their diversity. There were the Nomads, a group of survivors from a destroyed planet, their culture deeply rooted in the art of stealth and cunning. The Technocrats, a faction of brilliant engineers and hackers who could disable even the most advanced tech, and the Xothar, a race of alien warriors with their own code of honor, who had long been oppressed by the Council and were eager for revenge. Blake's role quickly became clear. He wasn't just a captain anymore. He was a symbol, a leader of something much larger, a rebellion. And the rebellion was growing. Slowly but surely, the rogue factions rallied to Blake's cause, uniting under the banner of resistance against the Galactic Council's tyranny. It wasn't just a fight for humanity anymore. It was a fight for freedom, for the very right to exist without fear. But the path ahead was far from simple. As the rebellion grew, so did the challenges. Blake found himself making hard decisions, ones that tested not only his leadership but also his morality. War was never clean, and the choices they made would have lasting consequences. Blake's leadership was put to the test during a particularly heated debate with Seraphina, a brilliant alien strategist who had once fought alongside humans in the early stages of the war. Seraphina was sharp, calculating, and fiercely intelligent. But she had seen the horrors of war up close, and she wasn't afraid to challenge Blake when she thought he was making a mistake. "We can't just charge into battle every time," Seraphina said, her voice low and tense. "We need to be smarter than that. We need to outthink them, not just outfight them." Blake frowned, rubbing his temples. "We're running out of time, Seraphina. The Council is closing in on us. Every day they grow stronger." "I know," she replied, "but charging in without a plan could mean the end of everything. We can't afford to lose any more people." Her word hung in the air, heavy with the weight of experience. Blake respected her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the rebellion was always just one misstep away from collapse. He had to make a choice: lead them into battle or wait for the perfect moment. He spent long hours in his quarters, looking over maps of the galaxy, plans of attack, and reports from his scouts. The tension was palpable. The fate of the rebellion rested on his shoulders. One evening, as Blake was reviewing intel from their most recent mission, Serafina entered his quarters. She didn't knock, as she usually did. She simply walked in, her eyes focused and determined. "I've been thinking," she said, and Blake could tell this wasn't just another strategic discussion. This was something more personal. "I think it's time for you to lead this rebellion in a different way. You're not just a warrior, Blake. You're more than that. You're the heart of this cause, and I believe in you." Blake looked up, surprised by the sincerity in her words. For a moment, the weight of the war felt lighter, as though Serafina's belief in him could actually change the tide. Her voice softened. "I've seen the way you lead, the way you fight, but there's more to being a leader than just fighting battles. You need to inspire people, give them hope. If they believe in you, they'll follow you into the heart of the Council's stronghold." Blake took a deep breath, feeling the pressure mounting once again. "I'm not sure I can do this alone, but I'll give everything I have. Serafina, for humanity, for all of us." The next few days were a blur of preparations. Blake and Serafina worked tirelessly to coordinate the various factions within the rebellion. They set up safe houses on rogue planets, supplied weapons and food to the resistance fighters, and developed new strategies to outwit the Council. As the rebellion's leader, Blake had to be everywhere at once, juggling alliances and war strategies, sometimes without sleep for days. Then the moment came. The rebellion had planned a daring surprise attack on one of the most heavily guarded Council warships in the galaxy, a ship known as the Judicator. It was a ship that was responsible for the brutal suppression of many of the galaxy's independent planets, and its destruction would send a powerful message to the Council. Humanity and its allies were no longer going to be silenced. The night before the attack, Blake stood on the bridge of the Raven, looking out at the stars. The fleet was ready, and his crew was prepared. But Blake's mind kept returning to Serafina. She had become more than just a brilliant strategist. She had become someone he trusted deeply, someone he had come to care for. "Are we ready?" he asked, his voice steady, but filled with an underlying tension. Serafina nodded, a rare smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "We're ready. This will be the first real blow to the Council, Blake. We're going to show them what humanity can do." The Raven and its fleet of rogue ships approached the Judicator under the cover of stealth technology. Blake's heart pounded in his chest as the fleet moved into position, cloaking devices engaged to hide their presence from the enemy. But he knew the clock was ticking. They couldn't stay hidden forever. Blake gave the signal, and the attack began. The cloaked ships moved in, striking with precision. Lasers cut through the darkness of space, and explosions erupted around the Judicator. It was a massive, coordinated assault, exactly what the rebellion needed to prove they were a force to be reckoned with. The battle was fierce. Ships danced through the stars, dodging explosions and enemy fire. The Raven weaved through the chaos, taking down enemy fighters and making daring strafing runs against the Judicator. Blake and his crew fought like they'd never fought before, their every move a testament to the years of struggle they'd endured. But the Judicator was a formidable enemy, and the Council was prepared. They retaliated with orbital bombardments, massive cannons that tore through space. Blake's crew fought hard, but the damage was starting to take its toll. Then, just as the Judicator was on the verge of overwhelming them, Serafina's plan came into play. The technocrats had managed to breach the warship's systems, disabling its shields long enough for Blake to lead a final assault. They boarded the ship, fighting hand-to-hand against the Council's elite guards. Blake led the charge, his heart pounding as he fought with everything he had. The mission was a success. They had struck a major blow to the Council, but the cost was high. The Judicator was destroyed, but at what price? The rebellion had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The fight was just beginning. The rebellion was alive, united under the banner of the underdogs, and humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. The final assault on the Galactic Council's stronghold was set in motion. Blake had led the rebellion to this point, and now, with humanity's future hanging in the balance, the time had come for the ultimate confrontation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Every fighter, every soldier, every ship in the rebellion's fleet was about to face overwhelming odds in the most dangerous battle they had ever fought. Blake stood at the helm of the Raven, his eyes fixed on the massive fleet of warships ahead. These ships belonged to the Galactic Council, the same faction that had branded humanity as a threat and sought to destroy them. Now, Blake and his allies were preparing to fight for their survival. The rebellion was united, but it wasn't enough to just fight back. They had to win. They had to strike back, and they had to win, or everything would be lost. The attack began in a flash of light as the rebellion's fleet surged forward, breaking through the darkness of space. Explosions rocked the stars as missiles and laser blasts tore through the void, creating an inferno in the cold expanse. The Raven darted through the chaos, its cloaking device flickering on and off as they made their way to the heart of the enemy forces. Blake's crew fought with everything they had, firing weapons, dodging incoming fire, and weaving through enemy ships in tight formation. The action was intense, fast-paced, and unrelenting. Blake's orders came in rapid succession, every decision critical. His mind raced as he watched the chaos unfold. The Council's warships were massive, their firepower nearly overwhelming, but Blake's fleet was nimble and resourceful, using their cloaking tech to stay one step ahead. The Council's ships fired relentlessly, but Blake and his team always managed to dodge or strike back with deadly precision. The rebellion's forces weren't the only ones involved in the attack. Seraphina's people, the Sothar warriors, had been fighting with the humans for months now, and they were a key part of the final assault. Their fleet of battle-ready ships joined the fray, unleashing waves of powerful plasma fire that tore through enemy vessels. The Sothar warriors fought fiercely, as if they knew this battle was personal. They had lost so much to the Council, and now they were finally getting their revenge. But even with all their strength, the rebellion faced a devastating reality. The Council's warships were not just powerful, they were heavily fortified, and their fleets were endless. Blake could see that they were losing ground, with enemy ships swarming around them like a relentless tide. Ships exploded into the void, pieces of metal and debris floating through space. Blake could feel the loss. He knew many of his people wouldn't make it out alive, but he refused to give in to despair. This fight was bigger than any single life. It was for the future of humanity, for the right to exist on their own terms. As Blake's fleet clashed with the Council's most formidable warships, the chaos grew. Missiles streaked through space, colliding with ships in brilliant flashes of light. Lasers shot through the dark, cutting through hulls and shields with pinpoint accuracy. The sound of combat, the screech of weapons and the roar of engines, filled Blake's mind. He could hear the cries of his crew, feel the heat of the explosions, and see the devastating toll the battle was taking. The emotional core of the battle hit Blake hard as the cost of war became painfully clear. He had known that this moment would come, the moment when the rebellion would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. But now, as the battle raged on, Blake felt a deep pang of loss, knowing that many of the people he had fought alongside would not survive this fight. The rebellion's casualties were mounting, and every loss felt like a personal blow. But even as the rebellion was losing ships and soldiers, Blake held on to the one thing that kept him going: his determination. He wasn't fighting for glory. He wasn't fighting for personal gain. Blake fought for something much bigger than himself. He was fighting for humanity's future, for the freedom to live without the fear of oppression. He could feel his resolve strengthening with each passing moment. He wouldn't give up. Not now. Not when humanity was so close to victory. In the heart of the battle, Blake found himself face to face with the Council's most dangerous enforcer, Vorlath. This was the man, the ruthless alien warrior who had been responsible for so much destruction, for so many lives lost. He was an embodiment of the Council's cold, calculating nature. Vorlath's ship appeared on the tactical screens, and Blake's heart sank. He knew that if he couldn't defeat Vorlath, the rebellion wouldn't stand a chance. The two ships clashed in a fierce dogfight, spiraling through space at high speeds. Vorlath's ship was a sleek, heavily armed battle cruiser, designed for one purpose: destruction. Blake's Raven, though smaller and more agile, was no match for Vorlath's firepower in a straight fight. But Blake wasn't looking for a fair fight. He was looking for a way to outsmart his enemy. He maneuvered the Raven through the chaos, dodging incoming fire and using his knowledge of the battlefield to gain the upper hand. Blake's mind raced as the battle continued. He knew that he was running out of time. The fight against Vorlath had to end soon, or he would lose everything. With a sudden burst of speed, Blake made his move. He disabled Vorlath's shields with a direct hit from the Raven's advanced weapon systems. The Raven darted in close, and Blake used his ship's maneuverability to ram the Council ship, knocking it off course. The impact sent shockwaves through Blake's ship, but it also gave him the opening he needed. Blake's crew launched a final barrage of missiles, and with a loud explosion, Vorlath's ship was destroyed. But the battle was far from over. As the Raven and the remaining rebel ships made their final push toward the Council's heart, Blake knew that victory was within reach, but it would come at a steep cost. The final assault on the Council's command station was brutal, with the remaining fleet fighting through a hailstorm of enemy fire. Blake knew that many of his allies had already fallen, their ships lost in the vastness of space. But their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Each explosion, each fallen fighter, brought them one step closer to victory. In the end, Blake made the ultimate sacrifice. With the Council's command station in sight, Blake knew that the only way to ensure humanity's survival was to make sure the mission succeeded. He gave the order to initiate a full-scale attack on the heart of the Council's power, knowing that he might not make it out alive. As the Raven hurtled toward the heart of the station, Blake's final thoughts were of humanity. He had given everything for this cause, and he knew that the rebellion, his people, would rise up in the aftermath. The battle would be won, and the future of humanity would be secured. The Raven exploded into a brilliant flash of light, as Blake's sacrifice marked the beginning of a new era for humanity. The Galactic Council was no more. The underdogs had struck back, and humanity had won the ultimate victory. The battle had ended. The endless war that had torn through space, that had driven Blake and his allies to the edge of survival, had finally come to a close. The Galactic Council, once a powerful force that ruled over countless planets with fear and oppression, lay in ruins. The fleets of the Council, their warships destroyed, their leaders fallen, had been shattered by the rebellion's relentless assault. The humans had emerged victorious, not just in a battle, but in a war for their right to exist, to thrive, and to shape their own destiny. For Blake, standing at the heart of this victory, it felt surreal. The universe had watched as humanity's forces clashed with one of the most advanced, most powerful factions in the galaxy. They had faced impossible odds, being outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated at every turn. But against all odds, humanity had prevailed. They had proven themselves as more than just survivors. They had shown the galaxy their true strength. They had defied expectations and, in doing so, had earned their place among the stars. With the Galactic Council defeated, the humans were no longer bound by the will of an oppressive regime. Their fate was no longer in the hands of distant, uncaring aliens. Now, humanity had the power to decide their own future, to forge a new path in a galaxy that had once seen them as insignificant. The people of Earth had won the respect of the galaxy, and in their victory, they had awakened a new era, a new dawn for the human race. Blake stood on the surface of a newly liberated planet, looking up at the vast expanse of stars above. It had been a long and difficult journey, and many lives had been lost along the way. But now, with the Galactic Council destroyed and their forces scattered, humanity could finally breathe. For the first time in a long while, Blake allowed himself a moment of peace. He could see the light of distant stars twinkling in the sky, their glow a reminder of how far humanity had come. The planet beneath his feet, once under the control of the Council, was now free. It was a symbol of the rebellion's triumph, a sign that humanity's victory was more than just a military conquest. It was a cultural and political revolution. The people of Earth had shown the galaxy that they were not weak, that they could not be silenced or crushed under the weight of alien rule. They had stood up, fought back, and won. As Blake gazed at the stars, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The humans had proven something to the universe that no one had ever believed possible. They had proven that they were not just another race in the galaxy, to be overlooked or dismissed. They had shown that they were fighters, survivors, and warriors. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We were never weak," Blake whispered to himself. "Now, they know why they should fear us." The words echoed in his mind as he turned and looked back at the small group of allies who had fought alongside him. Serafina, the brilliant alien strategist who had become not only a trusted ally but a dear friend, stood beside him. She, too, had seen the galaxy's underestimation of humanity. She had fought for the cause, believing in Blake and his people, and now she shared in the victory. Her people, the Sothar warriors, had paid a heavy price in the fight, but they had emerged victorious, side by side with the humans. Blake felt a deep bond with Serafina, knowing that their alliance had been instrumental in toppling the Galactic Council. The sacrifice of so many was not lost on him. And he knew that this victory was not just about the humans. It was about everyone who had stood against the tyranny of the Council. Every rebel fighter, every alien who had joined the cause. Together, they had created something new, a galaxy where freedom, equality, and strength could flourish. The victory was not without its cost. Many lives had been lost in the struggle, and a rebellion had paid a heavy price. Blake thought of the friends he had lost along the way, the comrades who had fought beside him, and had never made it to see this moment. They would be remembered, their sacrifices honored. The rebellion had taken everything they had, but in the end, it had been worth it. The victory had been hard-earned, but it was a victory that would shape the future for generations to come. As the final remnants of the Galactic Council's fleet were scattered across the galaxy, Blake knew that humanity's work was far from over. This victory was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the forces of oppression and tyranny were still out there, hiding in the dark corners of space. But now, humanity had the strength to fight back. They had the power to defend themselves, to protect their people, and to ensure that they would never again be at the mercy of a corrupt alien empire. Blake's thoughts turned back to Earth, the planet that had been at the heart of this rebellion. The birthplace of humanity's fight for freedom was still recovering from the war. The destruction caused by the Council's forces had left scars on the world, but Blake knew that Earth would rebuild. Humanity was resilient. They always had been. They had survived the darkest of times, and now they would thrive. The final shot of the battle was one that Blake would never forget. As the last of the Council's warships were destroyed, the bright glow of victory lit the way forward for humanity. Earth's starships soared through the galaxy, their engines blazing with the light of hope and determination. The people of Earth, the underdogs who had fought and bled for their survival, were now the galaxy's true warriors. They had earned their place in the stars. As Blake stood there, gazing up at the stars that now seemed to shine brighter than ever before, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The fight was over. The war had been won, and humanity's future was theirs to shape. The universe had changed, and humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. They had shown the galaxy that no matter how powerful or advanced an enemy might seem, there was always a chance for victory when you have the will to fight. They had earned their place in the stars, and now They would never again be overlooked. The future of humanity was secure, and as Blake stood there, watching the ships of Earth streak across the sky, he knew that the best was yet to come. The victory was not just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving to the universe that humanity had a place in it, a place where they could thrive, where they could rise to greatness. And as the stars shimmered in the sky above, Blake knew that the universe would never be the same again. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never forget the name of the rebels who had dared to strike back.